Hey, good morning, Tim.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. One of my favorite Japanese authors said, "In my life, I fight no dragons. I only fight bubblegum and little spiders. I wish I had some dragons to fight. I'm fighting lots of little spiders and bubblegum in my life lately, which is a really good sign. I don't have any great battles. It looks like my life is starting to settle down and things are getting a lot calmer, which means I'm happy. How are you?
Hey, doing good. It's the evening here, and we are a little late, maybe 5 minutes. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. We'll quickly let's start the show out here. People, my name is Kumar Pushpak, and I head the team here at Jona Services. And along with me, we have our friend Tim Chiram joining in from Albuquerque, sitting in the New Mexico City, back in the US. Uh, and what we will discuss will continue the same topic that we left last week, Tuesday, the executive assistant. But before that, how are things in the US, Tim?
Well,
Has
it's,
everything settled?
you know, that's really funny because things did start settling. And they have been settling for a while, which I'm really happy about. And it's wonderful. First of all, the vaccines are rolling out. Some of the country doesn't have extra vaccines for the second shots, but already they're starting to fix that. Okay.
Mhm.
Second of all, they had some problems with vaccines over in California, and about 10 people had some really bad reactions to the vaccine. But quickly, it changed to where they realized it was just one batch, 10,000 people, and it was only 10 people who had a problem, but they eliminated that vaccine from distribution, and it seems
Mhm.
to be all right now. And finally, the variant is starting to show up in all the states. And we have not seen a US version of the variant, but it's very predictable. And as soon as things start getting predictable and information is flowing, people calm down. So people right now are calming down, which is a good sign. I'm going to try something here. There we go. That's better. That's better. Yeah,
Yeah.
so things are going all right. We're really pleased with the
How
way
how
things are
is
going.
how is Trump doing? Has he also settled down, or is he
Who is
still?
who is Trump? Who is this person? Who is this person? He's anathema. He really is. It's being realized that this is bad. Now, the problems we're having in the United States are the problems we've been having since the late 1700s, and we're just coming to grips with it. So hopefully, now that the adults are in the room, now that dad is here along with mom, we're going to be able to start straightening this stuff out, and then in the next 4 years we can get back on track. That's the hope, and that's the vision that everybody in the country has. Basically, now we're going to get fed on a regular basis. Now we're going to all wash our faces at the same time. We're going to brush our teeth, and we're going to go for a family walk once a week, and we're going to continue this and see where it takes us. And that's the culture and the mindset that seems to be coming across, which is really, really hopeful. It's a good feeling. Nobody, quote unquote, likes discipline, but we all enjoy the results of discipline, and that's where this center of calmness seems to coming from.
Gotcha. Yeah, things should be normal, should feel normal. And I think with time things will heat up. And the new guy, Joe Biden, he will pick up things really, really nice way. All right, coming back to our main story, executive assistant. Already. So, as per you, what and how should I prepare for becoming an EA, executive assistant, or you can call it a personal assistant?
So I was reading one of my news feeds, and
Mhm.
I heard that Pat Gelsinger is going to be made CEO February the 15th. Now,
Mhm.
all of the um, critics of the tech industry have been beating up Intel Corporation for the last few years because it's a ship that's adrift, right? It's
Mhm.
not going anywhere. Now, Pat was working with the original creators of you'll understand why I'm talking about this in a second, by the way. Pat Gelsinger was working with the original creators of Intel Corporation, Noyce and Moore and Barrett, right? And
Mhm.
he actually grew up under them, and he worked for Intel for 40 years before he went over to EMC, and then he went over to head VMware. And Pat was a rock. He was consistent. He was wonderful. He was personable, and he was spot on. He was a chief technology officer when he left, but he was chief of operations for a long time. And it was rumored that he was going to become the CEO, but they brought a couple other people in as CEOs to take Intel in a different direction. Well, guess what? He's coming back so Intel can get back on track, so it can actually build its brand again. Now, it's all about the culture. Okay. Why am I talking about Pat? Because this is how you become an executive assistant. It takes a little bit of time. You actually build your relationships with the executives, and you slowly move to a position. Now, if you don't want to do that, there's a lot of things you can build inside yourself. But honestly, if you're an entrepreneur and building your own business, it's going to be a decade before you can sit back and say, I'm making six figures. If you're going to be inside of a corporation, it's going to be 3 to 5 years before you can have a healthy network. If you're in intro level or middle management, it's going to be 3 or 5 years before you start interacting with the executives. And then when you're first around executives, you keep your mouth shut, your eyes and your ears open, you note, and watch, and see what they do. And this is what I did when I was in consulting. I did this inside the corporation and outside the corporation. Every corporation I went into, whether it was a small school in the middle of North Dakota, or whether it was a blue chip, out on the East Coast. And I've worked with about 40 Fortune 50s and Fortune 100s. Keep your mouth shut, look at the executives, watch the people in the room who speak last. Now, this is going to cover the whole things, but there are a few things that we do need to learn as we're observing. The observation of human leaders in motion is the first thing. The
Mhm.
second thing is starting to develop yourself. And there are about 3 or 4 things you want to look for. Technical skills. And we're going to dive into these, by the way, guys. And if you have questions on any of these major categories, speak up. You have to be able to organize and plan and stick to a plan. And you have to be able to measure and determine status and be able to forecast and understand quality and risk. And there's no way about it. You're going to do some book learning. You may have some people to teach you. You may have to go to classes, find those classes. They're out online. How do I bring quality and management into my work? Project management does this really well. It has 10 areas of skills they call technical skills: scope, schedule, cost, quality, risk, communications, purchasing. And then they get into the soft skills, and they talk about how do you treat people and how do you treat people who report into you. And this is a good framework for you to start organizing what your strengths and weaknesses are. And early in your career, you want to play to your strengths, because you're going to do well, and you don't have to really focus on am I going to mistake it or not? And you look at your weaknesses and be honest with yourself and say, okay, where do I need to grow, and who can help me grow the fastest? And this is where your early eyes and ears, watching the people who are demonstrating things you want, and looking at them and seeing if they have time, and being able to take criticism very honestly. Now, that's just the technical part, okay? We also have, how do business work? We work inside of a company, but our managers tell us, just get the work done. We'll talk about that later. Don't worry about why right now. Worry about why. Figure out how business works. Business is the process of turning effort into revenue and profit. It's commerce. And if you understand the major general functions of business in one company, and you're able to see another company do the same thing in a different way, you start seeing the big picture. Now, you can make this go faster, right? You can read books on how corporations grew and how businesses grew, like the story of Bell Corporation. And I'm reading one from one of my friends, a guy who started a hotel chain here in New Mexico. He was a 9-year-old kid in the late 1800s, and he was moving bags for people off the wood into trains. Let me get his name for you, because you'll know him real quickly. He was a funny guy. I won't get the book right now, but he was brilliant, and he created a chain of hotels, and he became one of the major hotel magnates. And if you watch this, you see how these people, started off collecting trash or doing these things, and they built their understanding of business as they were doing the work, and they didn't wait for other people. They actually forced this on themselves. And you can do this too. You're not forcing other people. You're forcing yourself. Understand how that business works. And then you're not just working on skills. You're working on something called attributes and character. Now, these are funny, okay? We can dive into these. Let me spend a little time on attributes. An attribute is a characteristic of an individual. Let me explain this. It's not a skill per se, but it's something about their character and their behavior and their demeanor that actually demonstrates what they are as a type of person. Like discipline, let's see here, courage, keeping a clear mind, selflessness, sacrifice, fortitude, right? The ability to stand up in a storm and keep moving forward. These type of things we call character and attributes. And if you're going to get into a job you have nothing you know about, and we sometimes do this, you can get by on your character and your attributes when you don't have the skills. It's really strange. And especially if we're going into the unknown. Think about us back 30 or 40,000 years ago. Every day you were going into a dark forest and you didn't know if you're going to survive. You had a group of skills, but you also had to have patience. You also had to have all of these other things that you don't get necessarily through technical measurement. And then we have, on top of that, something called leadership. The ability to step up and be responsible and take action before anybody else does. And then, take the ownership of the results of a group's work on your shoulders. And that's called accountability. And not a lot of us have this. And so historically, and this is really interesting, historically, we have thought that a leader was born. You've heard that, right? He's a born leader. Actually, we're not. There were a series of 7 or 8 white papers that came out in the last 30 years that said, are leaders born or are they learned? And we learn leadership. And it depends on how quickly we learn based on, we're little children, and are we forced into situations where we have to step up? Or are we sitting at the seat of leaders who are able to demonstrate and take the time to teach us to lead well? Those are the ones that, like Pat Gelsinger, those are the ones who actually flourish, the ones who have that timing right. I want to learn how to lead. I want to learn how to manage. And I have the right people at the right time for the right situation. And sometimes these happen. Now, you can do this for yourself. You may need a mentor or advisor to help you with the timing, but the material's out there, okay? You don't have to go to class or school. You can spend $250,000 on an MBA, right? And you can learn all these things. You learn all the theory, but you don't have the application. Or you can take what you're doing right now and you can actually put your school around you. If you know what the materials are. We have in Western civilization, we have the 4,000 years of documents, and it actually goes back further to the Epic of Gilgamesh in Ur, and that goes back to 4,000, 5,000 BC. But India, you have what, 10,000 years of oral tradition with the Dhammapada and the Upanishads, and you have this poor archer who's in family standing up on the hill going, I don't want to do this. Is there another direction? And a God coming down says, finally, somebody's willing to listen to me. Here's how it works. And a lot of these leaders right now are waiting for people to step up. And if you're willing to step up and listen to these people and take their words and take them to heart and respect, being able to sit at the seat of somebody, there is an incredible amount of wisdom that we can actually procure from that. It's all about the relationship. Now, you were going to say something. I saw that in your eyes. What did you want to say?
Well, I was just peacefully listening to what you mentioned, and what is actually important to become a successful EA. Now, a few of the points that you mentioned, I would like to pick those pointers, right? One is the skills that you mentioned, right? The second one you mentioned about the attributes, right? The third one you mentioned about the leadership, all right? Now, could you also spend some more time in describing attributes, skills, and leadership? How these three can actually help me become a good EA versus one of the best EA?
So our friend Mark Gorkin would call this the head, the heart, and the gut. Okay, the head. You have to have your analytical skills sharp, right? You have to know how things work, right? And that's business, but it's also the technical component. You have to know the mechanics of business. Okay, you really do. A company will have a yearly cycle, and you have to have a strategy and a vision. Rashmi, I saw that wonderful question, and I am going to address that because that is such a common question I get from everybody. How do I get the attention of people? We'll talk to that in a little bit. With the head, we have to actually work and be very, very specific with the way we do our work. And we call that management. We don't just manage others, we manage ourselves. And when we manage ourselves, we measure, we analyze, and we make improvements. And that's a business function, okay? And that's highly analytical. And a business takes a strategy and a vision, which is out there 5 years, and we may never hit it. And it takes it into a 3-year plan to where you know what you need to do this year to hit your 3-year targets in order to build that platform that you can start working on your vision. And corporations are constantly doing that. And they frustrate employees because the vision is always out there and will never reach it. But at the same time, the work that we're doing here right now has to change because the whole world is unknown and it's becoming more and more unknown, and these changes are happening faster. And leaders in the last 10 or 15 years have not been very good at saying, you know, things are going to be a little goofy right now. And what we're doing today is going to change a lot, but our vision is stable. And that's what that has to be. And you have to understand that as an executive assistant too. Today's work is not going to be last week's work. And you're going to follow the cycle of business. And you're going to have operations which keep the business running. You're going to have the lines of business that keep the revenue flowing. And you're going to have to understand finance, and you're going to have to understand the technical part and all of that, right? So we have that business model out there. Okay, let's go into leadership, and I can take your question now. By the way, leadership is the heart. It's the ability to, yeah, that's exactly the right question. So leadership is the ability to influence. And your question is, how do I influence? How do I get people interested and curious? It's funny because in project management, we talk about engaging. What you're asking is, how do I engage my executives? How can I get them curious about me? So basically what you're doing is something called influence, which means the ability to make change. And all of us have that. We can move things on our desk, which is a little change, but we can also institute change in our work. Now, we may have a sphere of influence that's pretty small, but we can actually make that change, okay? We can do that. Now, power is the energy behind that change. And when you go to work, there's mainly one source of power you have, okay? Your job title and your rank. Like, I may only have $5,000 of decision making. That's my rank. Or I have $100,000, or I have $1 million decision-making rank, right? That's my power, the energy I need to influence, to make change. Now, there are other sources of power. If you want executives to recognize you, you may have to have a unique skill that nobody else is around you. That's called expert power. You may need to develop charisma and charm, the ability to walk into a room and have people recognize you and say, oh, that's the person that did that. Okay, now things click. I want to listen to them. And the second thing is, you can have other sources, the ability to reward and punish, the ability to be able to foster innovation and all these things. It's creating this environment. Now, we're getting into a blend of technical and of attribute characteristics. And it takes about 2 to 3 to 5 years to learn how to do this. And at 5 years, you have the technical stuff down. In 5 years, you're just starting to get a handle on people. And it's the people part that you're going to spend the rest of your career on, because you don't lead people by pushing them from behind. You lead them through working with them as they're moving through the work. It's just like working with a team of horses. You know, when you have 4 horses pulling the chariot, you have a choice. Do you want to let them pull the chariot in different directions, or do you want to make sure they have a reason to get back home, right? And you want to give them a reason. And that reason is the motivation, and it's the vision. And again, when we're talking about leadership, you're actually saying, let's focus together. And these people have to have a reason to focus together. Now, I'm talking about all these little threads, and I have yet to weave it into a big piece of cloth, right? Let's weave it into a big piece of cloth. You're going to have to do things that are not normal, and you're going to feel uncomfortable, and you're going to have to make mistakes. And this is one of the main reasons why people don't stick their heads up inside of companies. The ability to make mistakes. That's the hard part. And this is the old Drucker platitude, you know. A third of the decisions you're going to make in your life, and this is CEOs to janitors, are going to be good decisions. Only a third are really going to be the right decisions you need to make them. And a third of them are going to be the wrong decisions. And then there's another third of decisions that it doesn't matter whether or not you made decisions. You can't sit back for 5 weeks and go back in your history and say, I made a bad decision. No, you don't. And that's not what CEOs do. And as an executive assistant, you can't do that either, because a CEO is thinking, where am I right now? I collect the data of history to figure out where am I right now, and how do I get from here to where I want to be? How do I move the corporation from here to where I want to be? So as an executive assistant, you have to have that identical mindset. All of a sudden, we're not talking about just being an executive assistant. The best executive assistant is learning how to be an executive.
Right.
Think about
Also, what you mentioned earlier, Tim, this is just to add in to the response for Rashmi's question, is you need to have those attributes, skills, and leadership in you. I mean, the more you practice, the more you learn, you will acquire those skills and attributes, what Tim just mentioned. Once you have that, I'm sure people will be ready to hear you out.
So where did we learn these attributes first? Where did we learn? And this is the question you have, by the way, Rashmi. Here's the question. Where do I learn to be a leader if I don't have an example? How do I actually stand out in a meeting? How do I stand out in a room? How do I learn if I'm not given the opportunity? And this is one of the things that Entry-level managers are always asking me. And I say, start with the people that are your first followers. Your first follower is you. You learn these skills by practicing on yourself and being honest and authentic and say, how does this work with me? How do I get out of bed in the morning? How do I get and brush my teeth every day? These are the things that a manager and a leader do for the whole group. And what you're doing is by practicing them inside your life, you're not just learning how to lead. You're putting yourself in a more comfortable environment. You're creating a more safe environment. You're giving yourself authority or permission to change your life. And you're learning how to lead yourself. This is the key, because you don't have to tell people that you're a leader. The minute you start demonstrating personal leadership, people recognize it. And the more refined and the better you are at leading yourself, the more people recognize it. And all of a sudden you have people following you. It's magic. It really is. And I work with a lot of mentees over years, and they say, Tim, is this really? And all of a sudden it clicks. And they realize, oh, it's the attributes I'm demonstrating that actually gets people to trust me. And if you are able to demonstrate your leadership and you do it consistently, people are going to notice the results. The way you treat others, the way you treat your work and yourself, the approach you take to your mindset, your ability to step up in line of fire, all these things. And we will in the next few weeks go through these different areas of leadership. Debate, not arguing, but actually using logic and emotion and using morals and ethics. And that's the other part I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes. But do you have any more comments on this? Is this resonating with you, Kumar?
Right. I mean, I have some of the questions that I received over the week from different platforms. I mean, let's take those couple of questions before we jump on the regular discussion. Right. One of the questions that I received was by Shannon. Is how should I overcome my biggest challenge of saying yes to everything?
I'm not going to be flippant, okay? It's actually, you're going to have to prove to yourself that saying no is the right decision. You're going to have to just practice it and be uncomfortable with saying no. And the way you do that is start looking at saying, okay, where did I say yes? And where was I uncomfortable? And it's, again, I hate to say this, but it's getting back and creating a path called a journal. And this is what Douglas MacArthur did. And this is what Napoleon Bonaparte did. All these great leaders. And if you do this, you're following the steps of the greatest leaders of this planet. It's actually saying, where did I say yes? What were the results? What was the worst possible thing that could happen if I had said no? And if you have somebody you can talk to and you trust, you can actually work these things out too. But you're going to have to be honest with yourself. And that's the key right there. It's being authentic. It's being real going through this process. We say yes without actually understanding what yes means. And once you see the difference between saying yes and saying no, then you can start saying, oh, I'm more comfortable with saying no. It's bringing that logic into that emotional decision making. And again, it's giving yourself permission. I hereby give everybody listening to me permission to say no if they want to. We have that right, and we forget we have that right. This is why we have that mind.
Yeah, yeah. Is it all right? It's related to the question that I asked on behalf of Shan. Saying yes to everything, is this because of the fear that I have, thinking when I say no, people will react differently? Is that a
Well,
fear?
so there are three things that drive a human being, right? Number one, safety. Number two, I need a bit of control in my life. And number three, I need to do work that means something to me. I need fulfillment. Okay. So when you say yes, it's the hope that I'm going to keep my job. It's the fear that drives me, because if I say no, that means my job goes away. Literally, in these times, many of us are living that way. And think about a business owner, think about a CEO. If I say no to something, that limits my cash flow, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I say no, I don't get an extra contract. And everybody in a company thinking this way is going to actually limit their opportunities. Because when you say yes to everything, your attention span goes down, your ability to put energy into each endeavor goes down, and we don't think these things through. We don't slow down and analyze the impact of saying yes. And yes is important, but no allows us to limit. Now, we have to know what we want. And there's ways to know that, right? Finding your purpose in a company. If you're working on a project, why are we doing this project? In a company, why are we making this decision as a corporation? We need these objectives to help us say yes or no. And inside of a company, if you have just a 5 to 7 member team, if you know why your group is doing that work, all of a sudden you have the ability to say yes to this and no to that, because yes means my organization's going in the right direction. It's supporting the corporate initiatives. And no says it's a time waster and we're going to spend money over here. Now, you have to be open to debate, and you have to be open to, committing to a direction when your director says there, but that's all right. You can say a qualifying yes, which means I'll support you, director. I don't believe this is the right direction, but for your purposes, I have your back. Now, if you start saying these type of things inside of a business environment, they know that you're thinking. You're not just coming in, pulling a switch and going home. And number two, they know that you are behind them 100%. And just like you, they're afraid they're out in the wilderness by themselves, and they don't have anybody. And all of a sudden, if you're doing this to a group of people, and all of a sudden you do this to a vice president in a meeting, everybody goes, whoa. And no, this is the way humans work. And if you do this, all of a sudden a vice president says, I want you on my team. This is how it works. This is how it works. You treat people with respect. You treat people with honesty. This is what I see. This is what I've observed. I'm not making you wrong, but this is what I've seen. And if you see something differently, great, tell me. I want to learn, because you're a vice president. I'm not, teach me, please. But on the other hand, I want you to have the opportunity of my side of the story, just in case you don't see it from my perspective. And this is where we get into the role of slowly building into that executive mindset that you need to understand if you're going to support them. This is what an executive is. They're not looking for yes people. You're not a yes person. You're a thinking person who actually is on a course. And an executive assistant needs to be on a course, just like an executive does.
Right. Right. Now, I have another question here from Medicine. She says, let me read out that question. Okay, my mission or the organization's mission? What is more important?
Yes. So let me put it this way. Let's put it in context of the United States, right? So we have to get across the wilderness in the Southwest in the late 1800s. My mission is to get my family across. My corporation's mission is to move 10,000 to 40,000 people across that desert, that expanse. Now, as long as I know that those two missions are in alignment,
Mhm.
not only can I take advantage of the corporation moving, but I can actually move my family with it. But you need clarity. Your mission always comes first. Your mission always comes first. Corporations don't last as long as a human life anymore. Business units don't last as long as a human life does. So we must think of ourselves as a corporation with our personal mission, vision, and values. It has to come first. Now, what you want to do is understand the alignment between your personal vision and what the corporate's vision is. And again, it's going to take a little bit of thinking, and it's going to take a little bit of analysis. If you have a healthy manager, and we can talk about that later, how do I go in and do an assessment of my management and figure out, is this the good manager to work under? We can actually have these conversations out in the open, and you can have a manager that says, you know what, maybe you'd be really good in marketing in a couple of years. Let's get you in a couple places here in my group and get you prepared for that transition to marketing. And this is what I do. I may have to, in order to get to Oregon, which is on the North Coast, instead of California in the South Coast, if you have a healthy relationship with your management and your executives, they can help you because they know that in 5 weeks, they're going to be sharing a little lake with another group that's going to Oregon. And they know how to introduce you to that other group that's going up the coast instead of going off there. It's these movements that support your personal vision that actually allow you and allow the company to use your vision in their moving forward is what companies are looking for right now.
Mhm. Right. I have another question from Janice. What her question is getting my boss to let me know what's going on in the businesses. Okay, it seems that her boss doesn't tell her a lot of things about business.
And
Getting my
that's
boss to let me know what's going on with the business. Okay, what would you say?
keep your head down, get your work done. Don't worry about those things. That's for other people to think about. Your job isn't to know the big picture. Okay, I'm not going to make your boss wrong. Okay, that's the way a lot of people manage. It's not the way an executive manages, because an executive says, this is why we're doing it. A manager is somebody who's working with you in the jungle and saying, we need to move forward and cut the trees down and build the road. An executive is up in the trees saying, that's the village on the mountaintop where we want to live, because that is going to be where we build our kingdom. And what if you're not getting the vision, the why, you don't have any motivation. And that's key to understand. And as a manager, if you're not taking time to say why, you'll probably get people to come into work. As long as they feel safe, and as long as they have shoes, and as long as they have enough to eat, and they have a reasonable and a regular paycheck, they'll come in and do work, but they don't have a reason to do work well. And so what you need to do is find out how to do work well for your personal reasons. If your manager is not mature, and if they're not ready to take on the role of an executive themselves, you're going to take on the role of your personal executive. Why are you here in this organization? And if you don't have a good reason, I'm not saying quit. What I'm saying is find a good reason why you want to find good managers and good leaders to be around. And you don't have to be around them in person. You can read the articles they're writing. You can look at the webinars and the podcasts they're on. You can read their books. And this is where you can actually have a reason. And this actually allows you to figure out, this is why I'm working. I'm doing the paycheck thing in order to learn and grow. And that may be enough purpose for you to move forward. Having your personal mission is job one, finding my purpose. Actually, there's some other things you need to have in place in order to find your purpose. But this is it. Asking what your mission is probably the most important thing you should be doing right now. And if your mission isn't aligned with what your organization's mission is, and if your organization's mission is just come in, do the work, and go home, and you feel that's too limiting, that's great. Find a mission. Find a personal mission that going to work and going home can support, until you find somebody, not another organization, not another company, but another person who has the vision that you see. And it may be just a conversation with them once every 5 or 6 weeks or 2 weeks, or it may be that you have an ongoing relationship with them and they say, you have something, I'm going to help you find a position that's closer to me so we can work together, so you can actually get more experience in this. This is how people grow. Remember Pat Gelsinger? For 40 years, he was around executives for all that time, and listening to them and hearing them. And he was a very patient man. He's salt of the earth, by the way. And I do suggest that if you're interested in these topics, you watch these major corporations and you learn about these executives in your industry and see how they got to where they were and how they behave.
Mm-hmm. All right. I before we call it a day, I wanted to ask you one very common question. So I have received some 20 questions from a last week discussion, and one common question it is very interesting, by the way, and I'm a little bit I'm in shock why these questions has arisen. Question is related to respect for the position. So I have at least 7 people asking, how should we earn respect for our position that we do? How people should recognize that EA or as an admin, I'm important.
Okay. This is going to be a little tricky, and we are, if you can make note of this, okay, if you can make note of this, you deserve a cup of coffee. You as a person may not deserve a cup of coffee out of China, made out of China, the material. but you deserve a cup of coffee. Okay. The position relies on that. Okay. Now, this is where things go really interesting. A CEO deserves a cup of coffee out of a paper cup. A CEO position deserves that cup of coffee out of a china cup. Okay, see the difference? The minute that CEO steps down and a new CEO steps up, that CEO is a human being just like you and me and goes to a workstation and drinks coffee out of paper. Okay, they're no longer in that position. The position deserves that. Now, you earn respect through these attributes, and people give it to you as a person. The role is given that respect because how that role is perceived inside the organization. Think about it. Think about a mom and dad in a family, and the dad and mom decide to separate. And all of a sudden, the dad is adrift and can't run the family. That respect is all of a sudden, there. Oh no, I got rid of that ability to be a mother. And sadly, the organizations have these perceived notions, and this is called culture. And culture is very hard to change. It really is. And if you have a culture that says the role of the executive assistant is not that important, you may not be able to change that. But you can change the executive assistant is not important, but that person, I need them. If you can separate the perception of respect from the role to the individual, you're going to have much more success. Now, they may not want to let you move on once you're ready to move on. But if you can actually reposition the respect from the role to the individual, you're going to have a lot more success. It's quicker too. You can change yourself, right? And you can't change a whole organization's perceptions.
I think this question becomes more relevant when you start comparing the other roles as well. Right. It becomes more critical when you start comparing with other subordinates that's working in the office.
And there's one last thing. If you are one of those people who, even if you're a janitor, the way you behave and the way you act and the way you approach your work commands respect, people will find jobs for you. They will. They'll find a position. They'll create a position for you. And that's the magic. And again, don't rely on your job title. This is my mantra for 2021. Don't rely on your job title. Rely on yourself. Rely on building yourself. Don't worry about people respecting your job title. Work on yourself. And we have yet to even talk about morals and ethics too. And you and I need to explore that. That's on one of my we need to talk about this lists too. Having a strong moral compass is that gut thing that I was talking about. We'll approach that as we go into these topics in the future.
Yeah, let's continue this discussion next week at the same time, where we can bring in more questions. I still have some questions left in the list here. So let's engage in the next week, Tuesday, same time, and continue our discussions. Though, most importantly, people who had questions related to the respect. It's very important. Leadership, what Tim discussed at the beginning of this show, get those things in place, and I'm sure you'll have more respect, more responsibilities, and more co-sharing space with your colleagues and your subordinates.
Yeah,
And your,
and respect starts with respecting yourself. And
yeah,
if you have problems with that, talk to me. You're a miracle, guys. You're all a miracle. And getting through the last year and a half and looking forward to the future is actually standing in the middle of a storm and shaking your fist. Keep it up, guys.
right.
It's going to be rough for a few months, and things are get better. And we'll continue to have these discussions here. Kumar, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to these things with you. And as you have more and more questions, both you and the public here, let's continue to explore these topics.
The pleasure is all mine, Tim. I appreciate your time as well. So thank you so much for coming in the show, and I look forward to have another extended show on the same topic, executive assistant part 3, in the coming Tuesday, same time. Till then,
Sounds good.
take care of yourself, and yeah, keep distance, social distancing, and sanitizer and a face mask
Very
intact.
good.
Uh, until then, take care. Thanks for joining in today.
Thanks again, everyone. And thanks to you, Kumar. We'll talk.